It now being 7 o'clock, the regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Town of Orleans is called to order. My name is Michael P. Marnick. I'm the chair. And present with me are regular members Rolf Soderstrom and Beth McCartney, William McCarthy, Matthew Cole, and associate members Bruce Taub and Peter Jablin. Also present is the board secretary, Sandy Stewart, and Tom Evers, the building commissioner of the town of Orleans, is excused. Some housekeeping. It would be in order to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, which have been circulated. Do I hear a motion to accept those minutes?
So made.
And second?
Second.
A second by Mr. McCarthy. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Members of the public, we have one case to consider tonight, and that is the case number 2036. That is the application of Curtis Gonzalez and Catherine Gonzalez, if I've pronounced the name correctly. I hope I have. For a special permit is set forth in General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 9, under Orleans zoning bylaws, Sections 164-21A, Note 5, and 164-3C, to construct an addition and pool cabana resulting in building coverage which exceeds 4,000 square feet. This property is located at 23 Portrait Road, Orleans, map number 36, parcel 117. Have any members of the board present been in communication with the applicant or any of the applicant's agents, or have there been any communications which would lead to a conflict of interest or a situation which should otherwise be disclosed? No positive response. Therefore, I declare all members present to be indifferent and qualified to consider the application. We have a quorum, and the members present who will consider this application, although all members will be entitled to and invited to ask questions and otherwise participate in the deliberations, but the voting members in this case will be regular members McCartney, Marnick, Cole, Soderstrom, and associate member Jablin.
Share the wealth.
I appreciate the continued excellent attendance by all members. As the public ought to know, we have a complement of 5 regular members and 3 associates. That's what we're allowed to have under the town charter, and not all boards have a full complement. Our board does, and it isn't that you get on the board and you may come or not come depending on whether you're needed or not. Our associate members come to the meetings and participate, and for that we are greatly appreciative. Even are you ready to proceed?
Yes.
Thank you.
For the record, David Little from Ryder and Wilcox. Sitting to my right is Michelle Singleton of Cleddy Design, she's done the architectural work on the project, and Dave Hawk of Hawk Design, who prepared the landscape plan. We recently attended 2 Conservation Commission hearings. We have an approved order of conditions for the project, which I intend to submit into the record this evening. But there were some minor revisions made to the plan, which I'm going to submit. Structurally, nothing changed on the house or the cabana, but I would like to submit revised plans a revised site plan and a revised landscape plan from Dave Hawk. And I will outline the changes, and I highlighted the plans, the revision date in yellow so as not to confuse them with the plans that I previously submitted.
Let the record reflect that the site plan is submitted by petitioner is revised as of June 23rd, 2016, and the other plan submitted is dated June 22, 2016.
Thank you.
And we'll consider those as substitution for the two previous plans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And also, I'd like to acknowledge that many neighbors are here in the audience, several of which I had the opportunity to meet with at the site yesterday to review the project, to address concerns, which I will get into in my presentation shortly. So the Gonzalez wish to propose, or they propose to renovate and add on to their 5-bedroom dwelling and construct a cabana and a swimming pool. The additions to the dwelling include a larger master bedroom and bath, a screen porch on the south side of the house, a farmer's porch, which includes a screen porch, and also some doghouse dormers on the front of the house to break up the facade. The plans also include the construction of a cabana, which includes a bar, a sitting area, a pool table, a sauna, and a half bath. The changes that were made to the site plan and the landscape plan included the reduction of the deck, the size of the deck on the rear of the house, the elimination of a hot tub and a fire pit on the rear of the house, and also one thing I think which is significant for this evening is that the vegetated buffer along the southeasterly property line was extended, and if I could draw your attention to the landscape plan that I submitted. One of the abutters who is here, who lives immediately to the south of this property, attended the Conservation Commission hearing and was concerned about the proximity of the pool to their house. And in response to that, we extended a mitigation buffer within the buffer zone, and then also outside of the buffer zone, between the swimming pool and between the neighbor and the southerly boundary, to provide some screening. So those are essentially the two changes to the plans: the reduction in the deck and adding screening along the southerly boundary. All of the structures on the plan conform to the horizontal dimensional requirements of the Orleans zoning bylaw. The cabana is located approximately 75 feet from the street, where a 25-foot setback is required. And the swimming pool is located 22 feet from the side property line, where a 10-foot setback is required. The farmers, I think, and I'll let Michelle speak to this if you need to hear more about it, but the farmer's porch on the front of the house, which includes the screen porch, constitutes 656 square feet of coverage. And then additionally, the screen porch on the south side of the house constitutes 278 feet of coverage. And I want to point these elements out because, one, I think they improve the visual character of the house from the street. I think the porches themselves break up the facade, and they are considered usable space but not habitable space. So while we are asking for relief from the coverage requirement of 4,000 square feet, we're triggering that because we are we have 4,808 square feet, where 4,000 is allowed by right without the issuance of a special permit. And the cabana itself also has, if you look at the Michelle's plan, the cabana itself also has a roofed element that goes around it that constitutes approximately 191 square feet. So if you were to, if we were just to eliminate the porches, we would be below the 4,000 square feet. We could do this by right. I'm not saying that we should be allowed to do that, but I wanted to point out to everybody that the porches and the overhangs here are what trigger the coverage, and that's more for an aesthetic reason.
You know, it may not be considered as habitable space, but the fact of the matter is, those porches eat up, your point is that the porches eat up an enormous amount of square feet to accomplish what is really gracious outdoor living,
That's correct.
you know?
Thank you.
Because what you might have done is had a patio adjunct to the structure, but by choosing to do it by a farmer's porch, you need an awful lot of space to make that gracious.
Right.
Where a patio, you wouldn't be encumbered at all by square feet.
Nor a deck.
Yeah.
Right.
And the same principle is applying to the cabana, where there's a certain, you didn't do the calculation there, but the overhang is chargeable as if it were habitable space, even though it's outdoor living. It's
Yes.
being used that way, undoubtedly, or will be.
And so, as I mentioned, I did meet with the neighbors, and I mentioned, not all of them that are here, there's some that are here that I didn't have the opportunity to meet with yesterday. But they definitely have some concerns about screening and lighting. I have been in contact with the applicants, the Gonzalez, and they're amenable to hearing their concerns and addressing those concerns. But I'll obviously defer to the neighbors to address that. So that being said, I would like to provide the board with a copy of the approved order of conditions from the Conservation Commission. And in particular, I'd like to read a couple of the special conditions that I think are appropriate to this application. One is that the landscape submission plan dated 6/22/16 by Hawk Design must be completed as part of this order of conditions. Plants will be placed to ensure good coverage for the type and size of plant. More plants may be required than are shown on the landscape submission plan, and the plants installed will be maintained and replaced until they've survived for 3 planting years. And they also added a condition, and this was at the request of one of the neighbors, that no pool chemicals or runoff may find its way into the resource areas. So, and that's a direct result of the abutter that's here that lives closest to the swimming pool. So that being said, I'm going to address the special permit criteria, and then the three of us can answer your questions. As to the adequacy of the site, the 4,700 square foot site is adequate for the addition and the cabana. The resulting building coverage of 4,808 square feet is 11.8%, well below the 15% maximum. The residential site is suitable for the changes. The structures will comply with all dimensional criteria of the zoning bylaw, with the exception of the trigger for the 4,000 square feet. There would be no new impact on traffic flow and safety. The Gonzalez have 3 teenage boys, and it's a 5-bedroom house, so it works for their family. The changes as to the impact on neighborhood visual character, we believe the changes will have a negligible impact on the visual character. The addition in the rear will not be visible, and the pool cabana, as I mentioned, is set back 70 6 feet from the street right of way, and 93 feet from the traveled surface. And then in addition, we have already acknowledged the concern of the neighbor to the south and have provided a substantial buffer in addition to a stockade fence along that property line. The property is served by a recently inspected Title V septic system, has town water, and there are no stormwater drainage issues on the site. The adequacy of utilities and public services are not impacted by the proposed additions. There would be no noise or litter associated with the additions other than the temporary impacts during construction, and a dumpster would remain on site to contain all construction debris. And as to the impact on groundwater quality, recharge volume, and water quality of coastal and freshwater bodies, we feel that this project will not impact those resources, and the Orleans Conservation Commission has issued an order of conditions to ensure further protection of them. So that would be my presentation. I'll answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Very well. In this case, we'll proceed from left to right for questions of the applicant, with Mr. Taub.
Pass, thank you.
Leading off.
Pass, thank you.
Mr. Jablon.
I'll wait to hear from the people who are attending.
Very well. Mr. Cole.
I heard you mention the condition about pool water. So is there a drainage, I don't see it on the plan, is there a drainage structure planned for pool washout or anything of the sort?
We will be required to show a backwash pit for the Board of Health for their approval, and we have acknowledged with the Conservation Commission, although they did not add it to their conditions, if the pool water, for any reason, has to be drained from the pool, it would be drained into a pumper truck and removed from the site. We would not, in order to protect the adjacent resource areas and the concerns of the neighbor, we are comfortable with the condition that the pool would be emptied and offloaded into a truck if necessary.
Did they make that requirement?
They didn't, because it's not in their jurisdiction.
Okay.
The pool is outside of their jurisdiction, so they didn't make that requirement, but we are offering to make that requirement if the Zoning Board of Appeals so wishes.
Very well.
That's fine.
Mr. McCarthy.
David, could you just explain a little further how the reference to the existing septic system, it has 3 arrows. Is it the main box that's under the proposed porch?
Well, it's actually, there's a septic tank underneath the proposed walkway. It's not under the porch.
Okay, I see.
And then from there, it goes to a distribution box, which is not shown. And then there are 2 leach pits, which accommodate the effluent. And it is designed for a 5-bedroom house, and it is a 5-bedroom house, and Michelle's plans are in accordance with that.
So that the no change in bedroom number doesn't affect the, I was curious what the circles
It's just,
is.
those are the numbers on the septic tank. So, in other words, even though the walk goes over them, when it's pumped, they're going to have to provide access to the pumper when they pump it on a regular basis. The covers are required to be no further below ground than 1 foot for access.
Just one curious question on there are various numbers associated with different features, but where number 39 says porch, is that circular area, is that a walkway or a porch?
No, and I apologize for this, but I have 37, 38, and 39 porch on my plan, and then I have numbers around the cabana. Those were the numbers associated with the stakeout sheet for our field crew when they staked out the porch and the cabana for your viewing of the project. So the numbers are solely related to a stakeout, and I apologize that they appeared on the plan.
So
There's no bearing at all.
Is that circular area, is that a walkway or?
It's a walkway.
So, okay, so the porch is just what's to the left of that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. McCartney?
Gonna be a saltwater pool, or,
I don't know. I think I'll defer to Dave on that.
Sure, for the record, Dave Hawcock Design. We haven't really decided whether it's gonna be ultraviolet for the filtration or a saltwater pool. Those are the two filtration systems that we recommend, because the ultraviolet is probably the purest water quality wise, and the salt system's right next to it, where it makes its own chlorine, et cetera.
Yep. And then the pool equipment, is that just gonna be the heater, and
That's correct.
so it is not gonna have any shed or anything
At
over it?
At this time, we don't have it included in a shed.
Now, this is, basically, the pool is on the Pochert Road side of the property.
That's correct.
Is there much planting and things there, or how open is that? Is it vegetated now?
Right now, there's some trees in the front yard. It's
Mhm.
basically trees and some perimeter shrubs along the sidelines there. There will be some trees, obviously, that will be removed to put the pool in the cabana. We haven't gone through a full landscape plan
Okay.
as of yet, but usually we try to soften fences, and that little circle you were just referring to, that's intended to be a perennial garden there. So
Okay.
we haven't really gone fully into our planning plans beyond the conservation jurisdictional lines, but there is more landscape plan for the property, and some of that will be buffering, some of it will be aesthetic.
Okay, so it looks like you got the fence around a substantial part of the property there, and then there's gonna be a patio around the pool, and the rest of it will be grass around there?
That's grass and plantings,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Soderstrom, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Very well. Sure, please.
David, I got lost on the 5-bedroom count. It looks like there's 2 downstairs and then 4 upstairs with the study.
The study will make sure that that has a cased opening, so it won't be considered.
Okay,
a
so
study.
you get 3 up, 2 down.
3 up, 2 down.
Let the record reflect that the board has received for its file no correspondence from any persons in favor or in opposition or commenting upon the application. Now, let me ask if is anyone here present wishing to speak in favor of the application? No response. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Yes, ma'am. Can you tell us who you are and where you live?
I'm Sandra Marshall. My husband Phil and I live right next door
Yes, ma'am.
at number 31 Pochert. And while we are looking forward to meeting our new neighbors, and we understand some of the enhancement that's going to happen looks pretty good with the porches in front, we are very concerned, and I will list for you what our concerns are. The placement of the pool and cabana in the front yard is right next to us, right next to our gardens, right next to our driveway, right next to our. We, even though you have addressed this, we are still concerned about pool water seepage. How it will affect our pond, which is on the other side of our house, but also extends around to the property in question. How will it affect the aquifer? What kind of lighting is going to be used? And how bright is it going to be for this pool? And will it happen at night? That is a real concern. And if we heard a rumor that the property is going to be rented, how many people are gonna be using the house when it's rented and when using the pool, and what will the noise level be? And of course, the property, the square footage extending out as to the absolute limits of the requirements. We think the pool and cabana will have a negative effect on the shaded, quiet rural character of our neighborhood. Basically, those are our concerns. Thank you. Oh, and yes, we also are wondering about the real estate value of all of our properties. And all this is going on with a big pool is being built in our neighborhood. What's gonna happen to the people around us and to us? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall.
Yep.
You know, I really ought to remark that if the applicant chose not to put the farmer's porch and the screen porch as part of the architectural detail, we probably wouldn't be here, because the construction of the pool otherwise would, you know, and most of your remarks are devoted to the pool, and rightly so. And as it turns out, because the impact on the neighborhood then is one of the factors, then those remarks, which you never would have been able to articulate otherwise, are relevant. So we've listened to that. I understand that you haven't met the folks who, you haven't met personally with the folks who are in here looking for this relief.
There's a question?
Yes.
Just from a sort of, you were saying how you laid out for study purposes and all, and I'm just curious if any thought was given to kind of a reversal of the location of the cabana and the pool.
Okay.
Such that the pool wouldn't be right up against the property line, and I'm not sure if that even would address the concerns, but
That's something that Dave has spent many hours on with the Gonzalez. I didn't even need to show the pool on my plan. We can do the pool that right. There's no requirement that you need to approve
Right, I
the
think
pool
the
or the
chairman-
pool location. The cabana is located, we tried to locate that in further away from the Marshall's property and closer to the driveway. I would suggest that if there are people enjoying the pool, they'll probably spend more time in the cabana than they will in the swimming pool.
And you mentioned there's gonna be a bar in the cabana?
Yes,
Okay.
there's a,
That might be something to consider.
but I showed the project to be forthcoming so that you and the neighbors have the opportunity to see everything that's going on there. I'm not trying to hide anything.
No, that's, you should be transparent.
Anybody else?
Are there any other questions from any members of the board? Excuse me, yes, ma'am, you want to?
Other neighbors who would like to comment.
Very well, I wasn't closing that out.
Okay.
I'm just first wanted to see whether any members of the board wanted to ask questions of Miss Marshall or her husband. Are there any questions of the Marshalls? Very well, then, ma'am, can you want to identify yourself?
I'm Janet Taylor. I live at 3 Larboard Lane, which is directly across Pochard Road from the property in question. And I too had been looking forward to new neighbors. The house had been on the market for quite a while. And I have a letter for myself as well as for the neighbor immediately on the other side who was not able to come tonight, as well as a neighbor on Brick Hill Extension who also wasn't able to be here. And I think there's, if I were to summarize the concerns, then one is that the scale of the plans worry us in terms of the impact on the character of our neighborhood. And the fact that these, particularly the cabana and the pool structures are on the roadside, and as you pointed out, Mr. McCartney, without any vegetation plans to shield a lot of that we worry about it. We also have concerns about the lighting, as Sandy said, and noise factor and the question I have also is if the fire pit and the hot tub have been removed from the back of the house, are those in the new plans, and where would they be, and what will happen around smoke and more activity resulting from those efforts. And I think the worry about our ponds, we have several in the neighborhood, and the seepage, the potential of overflow if there are heavy rains. How do we know how to monitor that anything would be pumped and trucked out? We don't know how often that would happen or when that would happen, and how would we know to report it. So I think it's those environmental concerns, the quality of the character of our neighborhood that we're really raising questions about.
Ms. Taylor, did you have an occasion to speak at any hearing of the Conservation Commission?
Unfortunately, I had to be in Boston that day, and I couldn't be at that, and I was glad that Mr. Marshall was able to represent us and express some of those concerns. I'm sorry that I didn't think to submit a letter to that process.
No, but the Conservation Commission then may have had the opportunity to consider your concerns about the effect of the aquifer and the neighboring ponds. But you're ignorant as to that because you weren't there.
That's right.
And you're speaking,
Were you, Mr. President?
I was there and I raised that issue.
did the Conservation Commission deal with it?
Did they deal with it? We don't think.
They felt that it was outside their jurisdiction.
Ms. Taylor, you're
It's other than
speaking,
100 feet.
you're speaking for another neighbor too?
Yes, I'll provide the names. It's Joyce Wentland at 17 Pochett Road, and Susan and John Sasso at 8 Brick Hill Road Extension.
Very well. We'll consider that you're speaking for those two families also. Is there a letter that you want to submit
I have
in
three.
evidence?
Yes, I have 3, one for myself and one from each of them.
Very well.
May I ask her a question?
Yes, you may. Mr. Jablin, do you have a, Mr.
Yes.
Jablin has a question of you, Ms. Taylor.
Okay.
Ms. Taylor, one name was Sasso at 8 Brick Hill, and I missed the other name at some.
Wentland, W-E-N-T-L-A-N-D. And she's at 17, which is on the other side of 23 Pochett.
That's Mrs.
Joyce Wentland, W-E-N-T-L-A-N-D.
Thank you.
She and her sister own that property. And they're, because they live at a distance, they are in the process of probably putting their homes on the market, and so they're concerned about the implications of this work on their ability to make that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in, yes, ma'am?
The name is Jacqueline Brevard, B-R-E-V-A-R-D,
Thank you, ma'am.
and we are 44 Barley Neck Road. So our property abuts them in the back. I don't know if it's the west side of the property. And also our neighbor, our next door neighbor, Natalie Hull Maloney, was not able to come tonight, and her property abuts them along their driveway side,
Yes, ma'am.
and she has concerns as well. I don't have a letter from her.
That's all right. Are you going to make a statement which would be your combined commentary?
Well, I'm speaking for myself.
Very well.
I just know she has some concerns about the driveway side that I can't.
Very well. Let's hear from you then.
Okay, I do have questions, and they could be resolved by information that I don't have, or I'm not sure. It seems that the hot tub and the fire pit have been eliminated. Am I correct in understanding that?
They have been eliminated from the rear yard, which is closest to your property, that is correct.
So they're still in the plan somewhere.
No, they're not on the plan somewhere, but anybody has the ability to put in a hot tub or a fire pit. And they still may do it somewhere outside of the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction.
Okay, but the reason why that's a question from my perspective is that I was concerned about the mitigation plan, the landscaping and so forth, because, I mean, we've been in this area for more than 30 years, and that whole section of town used to be a cedar forest, right? Most of our property is cedar trees. And in the back where we abut them, I was concerned about what was going to be cleared and what was going to be placed. So, I'm not really sure.
If I could show you our
So,
plan, so this is the edge of clearing. All the work is occurring within lawn, and we're actually creating an additional vegetated buffer adjacent to your property.
Are there cedars coming down here, or no?
No, all the work that's occurring is in open lawn area.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay, but I do have a recommendation to make, if you're willing to consider it. I think that the trees, I mean, given, you can get bigger plantings, and what you have here is like 5 to 6 feet. You can probably go 10 to 12 feet. If you really want to do the neighborhood favor, I would go with bigger plants. And fast growing, just make it a recommendation.
One of
Use up the Hudson
we
budget.
did propose faster growing evergreens, but they weren't native trees. And so the Conservation Commission asked us to remove them from our plan and propose natives, which Dave Hawk has done. He's proposing red cedars and white spruces, which are both
This
native
side of it.
evergreens.
They're talking here.
Yeah, right.
She's talking
Taller
here.
because these are
But is,
slow growing
where's the jurisdiction
plants.
for, is it
So taller is
100
also
or-
the
Right, I think,
that
you
put
know,
the
the
pool
viburnums,
outside
they
of the
grow
conservation?
fairly quickly.
Oh,
So,
did the hot tub in
you
here?
know, again, this is a
I don't think it had anything to do with the conservation area at all. I
Beyond
think it was just that
what is existing tree line now, so
they had
it's,
to
it's more
get some permission.
naturalized planting that
It's
goes
only
out
to the
there.
conservation
So,
area.
I
Bill.
see.
We can certainly take a look at that area.
Okay, then, other than that, since we're abutting the property with very limited space, I'd like to also incorporate my neighbor's concerns about the environmental issues, the pond issues, aquifer, and
Very
the
well.
noise, lighting, the whole nine. And
Very
this is
well.
our neighborhood we're concerned about, just as you would be about yours.
Thank you, Ms. Brevard. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, sir.
Lee Silverman. I live at 6 Brick Hill Road, which is in a corner of Country from Victoria, with my wife Glenna. And this is just a Me Too statement, but at the very least, I think adding a nice dense wall of foliage along the Poacher Road side would certainly help a lot and might mitigate some of the sound problems we're talking about too.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Silverman. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? Thank you. We're receiving a letter from Lee and Myrna Silverman in expressing concerns. Ms. Marshall and Ms. Taylor, is it fair to say that you are opposed to the application the way it is right now?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Little, do you have any further commentary?
Yes, as after my meeting yesterday, which both, which those abutters were at, I did contact Kurt and Catherine Gonzalez relative to providing a robust screen along Pochett Road, hoping that might address their concern. And we are on board with that, and we would be prepared to come back with a revised plan for you to review, to show that, or if it could be approved subject to. And I would defer to Dave Hawk on that relative to the depth of the screening and what type it should be, because it's a shady area. But we are more than willing to do that, and we're also willing to have downward facing lighting. I've heard, the two big concerns were the noise and the lighting and the pool.
Well, the environmental seems to be the biggest, most consistent
that-
concern, right? And I think your offer for the
Unfortunately, Phil
condition.
was the only one that came to the Conservation Commission.
But-
These neighbors who were notified, and they were concerned about the environmental issues, they didn't come to the we had 2 hearings with the
But I
Conservation.
think
No,
your offer for the condition addresses that, right?
I'm hoping.
Your offer to require that any pumping be done into a truck and taken off-site prevents any spillage from the pool, any water from the pool entering groundwater, right?
Yes.
So I think the 3 big concerns you've addressed or can be addressed.
Mr. Marshall, you have something to say?
Yeah, you can't tell me that 2 teenage boys are not gonna be jumping in and out of this pool, splashing water onto the land, which is gonna leak into the aquifer and into my pond in the back of our house.
Just like I can't say that you're not gonna mow your grass and dump 5 gallons of gas by knocking the container over. I mean,
I have a big
you're right.
pond lawn because I don't wanna damage a vegetated wetland in a cattle pond, which is my entire backyard.
If I could,
It's a very serious environmental issue.
Sure.
if I could respond to that, again, the new filtration systems, if you look into them, if you let them go for a couple days, they're almost drinkable water. So those levels are way, way down from the pools that we grew up with, where you popped out and your eyes were all red. That whole technology has changed quite a bit. And like I said, the 2 systems that we're looking at is the ultraviolet and the salt system, which, takes those chemicals down quite a bit. So it's almost close to that drinking water if you let it set for a few days. So, I just would be mindful of that.
I understand that part of it. I'm concerned that the objections are, as Mr. Cole has stated, and they're somewhat diverse, and some of which could be mediated. To some of us may be disturbed that the Conservation Commission didn't deal the way someone might think it could have dealt with the situation involving the aquifer, and if there's kettle ponds in the area, that's something that the Conservation Commission at least may have dealt with a little bit better. But in the absence of a whole lot of scientific testimony before this board, that's an area that ordinarily we wouldn't inquire into. However, on this question of whether there are conditions to be attached to the special permit, then if that can be mediated and agreed, then, and they're otherwise sensible and adopted by the board, then that's something that would be sensible. But for us to endeavor tonight, for example, to try to satisfy everyone, attaching a string of complicated and diverse conditions to a special permit, that might be a little bit going too far, at least tonight, July the 6th of 2016. Now, I know Ms. McCartney has a comment, but bear in mind that we have an ordinance in the town relative to the use of lighting. We have an ordinance in the town concerning noise. We trust that all of us will be good neighbors and there is no good way, or ever would this board attach a condition that the property couldn't be rented seasonally if the special permit were granted. So we're dealing with a lot of good faith and trust amongst neighbors or people who are acting on behalf of neighbors. That's my speech, but it's an overlay to the problem here, that the board, the way some of us on the board might think, and how to solve the problem and still make sense out of what otherwise seems to be a sensible development that has taken some kind of pains to satisfy those who are abutting and might otherwise object. Ms. McCartney.
As a real estate broker and a rental agent and a homeowner with a rental next door that sleeps 8 people and an in-ground swimming pool, it's not that big of a deal for people. I have the lights in the pool. It's not like there's going to be pole lights up. They may have like an outdoor light on the cabana, like one little light, but people don't use the pool that much at night. If the house is air conditioned, they're going to be inside. If it's like really, really hot, they're going to be in the pool. But as a rental agent, we rent usually a house like this. If they were going to rent it, would probably go to 2 families. They each have 2 or 3 kids. They like having a swimming pool so the kids are contained. They pay top dollar, so they're high quality people. And it has not been a problem. I have a saltwater pool. The fact that they're willing to have the you open the pool, I open mine in May, and then I close it in September. If they truck the water out, they just drain the pool down below the pipe so it won't freeze. They put a cover over it. I feel like you people are expecting, like, I want a public pool that has lights and lifeguards, and I'm guessing it'll be tastefully done. If there's problems with it, you can always talk to the people. I'm guessing they're probably going to have it professionally maintained, and somebody comes out and checks it every week. If it's a new pool, it should not be leaking. And if they splash water out, I don't think that's really going to have an impact. So I think it's just an unknown that you're looking at. I don't think it's going to affect your property values. I'm guessing they're going to do a nice job of landscaping it and giving it privacy. You don't want to have your pool looking out on the road.
No, more than 5.
So I think you have to have some faith.
Mr. Marnick, may I make?
Mr. Javelin, yes.
I'd just like to make kind of a couple of general statements echoing Mr. Marnick's remarks. Obviously, there are some things here that are beyond our control, such as noise. And unfortunately, or fortunately, that has to be left to calling the police or talking to the neighbors diplomatically. But we can't resolve that here, obviously. Rental, we can't resolve that here, obviously. Some things we can talk about are lighting. Someone talked about downward-facing lighting. Someone talked about the height of native trees. And I'll just be very blunt, if they can afford to do this, if they can do these other things, they can have higher trees. They can afford higher trees. I know the equipment exists that can dig the hole and stick them in the ground, because I see the trucks go down the highway. I'm not familiar with pool construction. We're talking about backwash pit. But I have seen huge tanks of oil along the highways of our plains regions in the United States, and they have pits of like concrete around the tanks, so that if the tank leaks, it won't go anywhere. Now, I'm sure there are fancy stone or fake stone facade versions of things, because we can lose power here, we can have hurricanes, we can have trees fall in the pool, it can knock half the water out of the pool, it can be filled with slime before trucks can get in there. There are all kinds of contingencies to put chlorine water into the aquifer. Is there such an apparatus that can be tastefully put around a fancy private pool that can contain some of this.
Well,
If you
I've
don't
been doing
think,
this for 30 years, and I haven't done that one yet. But,
Well, maybe this
you know,
could be a start of
possibly,
something.
Again, I would say that the water in this pool,
Yeah.
you will find, and obviously if it sits for a long time,
Mhm.
then that would be an issue. This would have a filtration system that keeps that to a minimum.
As long as you have power.
Right. You know, we could have taken a look at, and I'll just give you a brief, you know, a lot of people do like to put their pools in the backyard. This lot was challenged because we had wetlands issues and we had vegetation along there. So the client would like to have a pool. So it had a big front yard. So program-wise, we got it away from that area, from that very sensitive area. We pushed it probably another, 50 feet out of the resource area?
Okay.
So that we're away from that. So I think that was all part of our thinking, is to, you know, again, there's a resource area, and that's that 100-foot line there. Beyond that, we are out of the wetland buffer zone.
I know, here's what I'm kind of thinking. I heard very clearly that you can put the pool in if you want to. I understand that. But what I'm trying to do here is find a way that there can be peace and resolution without too much complicate. Do you think there's anything that you can come up with that would satisfy the abutters that this water could be contained even under somewhat extraordinary circumstances?
You could condition that the property owner install a generator, then they wouldn't have an issue if power went out.
I think the offer to truck water is both wildly expensive and wildly generous to address this issue. I mean, that commitment as a as a permanent condition on this special permit lives on forever and is accepting a huge expense and burden going forward, which I think appropriately addresses the environmental concern.
I agree.
So again, I pose the question, do you think there is something that you can come up with and still have peace?
Peace with respect to
The
noise?
abutters with the aquifer, the noise we can't. Yeah.
I attended the Conservation Commission hearings.
Right.
And they were cognizant of Phil's comments with respect to pool water splashing out and finding its way into the aquifer.
Mhm.
It was with respect to pool water splashing out, not the pool getting a leak. I think the pool getting a leak is a whole nother matter, which probably doesn't happen. It rarely happens.
Mhm.
As a practical matter, to try and contain splashed water, we could provide some drainage around the pool, but I think you mentioned chlorine, Mr. Jablon.
Yeah.
This doesn't have chlorine.
Okay.
Dave Hawk said it is either gonna be salt
Mhm.
or it's going to be ultraviolet.
Which I don't understand totally, but,
Well-
and maybe the abutters don't either, but,
It just creates a water that
Mhm.
is not it's not that harmful.
okay.
Well, the salt system generates its own chlorine, and the reason it feels good to the skin and the eyes don't get red is it matches the pH of your eyes. And that's a greatly reduced level of chlorine from the older days when we used to dump it in with the buckets.
Okay.
So that is the reason, and the ultraviolet is a filtration system that it makes it even more pure. It doesn't involve that level of chemicals at all. So both the salt and the ultraviolet are two readily available filtration systems that keep those levels of chemicals down,
As long as you got power.
as long as it is taken care of, et cetera.
Okay.
Right.
Mr. Marshall, you have a
I
comment?
certainly would be happy with salt water draining into my freshwater pond or my wetland. And I have almost an acre of wetland and pond, which is my entire backyard, which I own, or we own.
If I could hand out.
Is that a Google overlay?
it is a Google overlay that I'd like to hand out, and it shows Mr. Marshall's house, and it shows the applicant's house. The swimming pool would be here, and Mr. Marshall's driveway and his house are in between the pool location and the wetland. It's not as if we're building a pool next to the wetland and the water is gonna find its way into the aquifer. The elevation of the ground where the pool is being built is approximately 58. The edge of the bordering vegetated wetland is at 44, so we're 14 feet in elevation above the perched water situation there. And I would suggest the effluent that's going into those two leach pits is far more damaging to the aquifer than the pool water that's going to be sitting in this pool or gets splashed out of there when some children are playing in it.
Okay, well said.
Mr. McCarthy.
David just said, relatedly, when we look at the various images on the landscaping plan, we have the rectangular pool, and then some lines further out. Is it intended to be grass from the fence line to where close to the pool? I'm just curious.
I don't think they haven't generated that detail of work, and I would be happy to, I understand this is a difficult project for the neighbors, and do you have another meeting before you adjourn in August?
July 20th.
Let me just follow, because maybe just that you can answer it, unless that's concrete to the stockade fence and tree line, which I doubt it would be, we're talking about a distance of how many feet of grass area?
At least 15.
And I'm trying to be sensitive to the neighbors' concerns here, but I'm thinking even in a maximum splashing scenario that, how much water ends up in the grass, which could ultimately then permeate the aquifer is, for your consideration, and just wondering how serious in practice the issue would be. There's one other related question, which is it's a tiny one on the scale, but can you describe what the rinse out station purpose is at the opposite end between the garage and the shed?
I think that's an outdoor shower.
It's a fancy name for an outdoor shower.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Do you have a proposition, Mr. Little?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I think if we could have an opportunity to, or if Dave could have an opportunity to talk with the applicant to provide some more detail on the landscape plan and come up with a buffer along Pochett Road, we can, I'm not sure we'll be able to satisfy all the neighbors' concerns, but I think we can address most of them and add some plan notes that might make it easier for your conditioning of the project.
This is what I was speaking for myself, that's what I was thinking too. I know that at first, it appeared that the issues were diverse, but having flushed them out a little bit, I think there's only 3 or 4, and they're not insurmountable. Only speaking for myself, that we may not be dealing with all of the complaints, noise and lighting, for example, in my opinion, can be handled by the town regulation otherwise. But if, with a couple of weeks, I think that some application might be able to.
And I actually live in the neighborhood and know several of the abutters that are here.
Very well.
So I can contact them and provide them with revised plans, and not that we'll be able to solve all the issues, but we'll certainly do our best. before we come back.
No, I
in 2
think
weeks.
these applicants may be strangers to the butters, but you're not. And that would be a good idea. You're suggesting that we continue the hearing for 2 weeks?
If we could, please.
I think we
Can I
need,
ask one last question?
yes.
Do you, since they came up, do you have any information to share on whether there is the intention to use it as a rental property or as a, I know.
I think they may rent it some of the time.
Okay. I used to live next door to McLean, Virginia, so I know it's a long hike from there to here, so it's not like coming down from Boston on weekends, so that's why I was curious.
Yes.
Very well. Then good. I think you need to ask for a 2-week continuance and then,
July 20th.
and,
The form,
and
this
ex-
format doesn't
ex-
matter, but,
I can,
Okay,
so you need
all
a
right.
letter from me?
sure, thanks. There you go.
I'll make a motion to continue to July 20th.
Second?
Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Then we'll see you on July 20th, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
The only other item on the board's there is the agenda also indicates that the listing of matters are those reasonably anticipated by the chair which may be discussed at the meeting, and other items not listed may be also brought up for discussion.
Excuse me, could you exit quietly? Could you exit quietly? We still have a meeting. Thank you.
Members of the board, sometime in June, the application of William and Marcia Foster was in front of us. This was an appeal of the denial of the a decision of the building commissioner concerning whether a lot was entitled to grandfathering for protection, and we unanimously overruled the decision of the building commissioner. I have a letter dated July 1, 2016 from Mr. Farber, counsel for the Fosters, who suggests that General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 15, in part requires the board to make a detailed record of its proceedings, including specific findings of fact. He claims that we didn't do that, and we ought to, and I'd like to put this on, since we'll be meeting on July 20th, put it on, and we'll make some, we'll move for some findings of fact and adopt the decision then. Is that all right?
We
No,
didn't
you
already
don't?
do that?
No,
we
because
didn't at the
we
time.
didn't, otherwise I would have written a decision. But
Okay.
since we never made findings of fact, we just wrapped it into
Okay.
to overruling Tom Evers' decision
Okay.
that it was kind of denuded, and I thought at the time, I thought it was sufficient, but
Okay.
Mr. Farber has corrected me, and I think it would be better if we did it that way, and
Okay.
in 2 weeks, we'll take care of that, housekeeping.
Do you want him here?
No, I don't think that's necessary. You may invite him, and all I need is the file, Sandy.
Would you be so kind as to forward a copy of the letter from Farber to us?
This one you may not have been favored with because it's addressed to me at my residence.
Ah.
He's a
He didn't
sly,
like the answers he was getting from me, so he went straight to you.
he's a sly character, that one.
Yes, he is.
Anyway,
Had my own,
too.
had my own dealings with it.
we'll receive this for the file, give it to you, and circulate it to the members of the board, especially Mr. Tauber. Now it would be, as there's no further business to come before the meeting, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
There are two young gentlemen in the room, I don't.
My two grandsons.
Ah, excellent.
Excellent.
Sure.
Hi, guys.
So moved.
Very well. Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.